Welcome to the Embodiment Conference 2020, also on behalf of the whole team behind the scenes. Thank you for your attention to another amazing presentation about intimacy and relationship. My name is Ilan Stefani and it's my pleasure to be sponsoring this channel, as I deeply believe that aliveness, embodiment, intimacy, relationship are key to individual and global change. My ongoing somatic research is focused on more and more aliveness for each and every one of us. I tune into the fields of collective trauma, of intimacy, of love and rage, shadow work, and a higher and higher level of energy. If you are curious about my work, you might want to catch my presentation on this channel as well as on the main stage. And you can also head over to my website ilanstefani.com. My methods have been described as an embodiment training for warriors. However, you are so welcome to find out yourself. I teach online and in person. I teach in German as well as in English. Thank you for your attention and please enjoy the following presentation.
Welcome, dear Sandra. Sandra is a certified emotional-focused therapy trainer, a supervisor and a therapist, and she's also the coordinator of the British EFT Centre, and her interest in relationships has been a constant in her life and work. So either as an occupational therapist in mental health settings, as a counselor, and then also educator of counselors in university and also college and charity settings. And her PhD was on the reciprocal influence of counseling students and trainers. So this topic of the session is emotion and the distressed couple, emotionally focused therapy in action. So Sandra, I'm really curious where you're going to lead us today. Welcome, and I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm certainly going to lead you all on a journey. So thank you for all of you who are joining me now or will join me later on this session. I'd like you to imagine a scene, and if it helps, you might want to close your eyes. You can see into a kitchen. You can see the sink, the cooker, the work surfaces, the window, and outside the sun's coming up. Sam walks into the kitchen with a couple of mugs in hand and goes to put them by the sink, but one slips and falls to the floor, making a really loud crash. And suddenly Pat appears, startled by the noise, sees the pieces of mugs scattered across the floor. There is no laugh, there's no, "Are you okay?" And instead Pat erupts. "How could you be so careless? Look at what you've done. That's more to clear up, more money wasted. You're so careless, you don't care about anything." Sam starts to respond. "I didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. Don't be so unfair." But Pat's on a roll and can't stop. "Last month you broke my favorite bowl. It's my mug now, is it? You just don't care about anything that's mine," before running out of the kitchen in tears. Sam finds the dustpan and brush and sweeps up all the pieces and puts them in the bin. You can see the heaviness in Sam and you can hear the muttering. "Here we go again. I got it wrong again, and it's the same old fight. Will it never end?" If your eyes were closed, just open them up again. Just notice how you're feeling. Just take some deep breaths and just settle yourself. For a lot of couples, by the time they reach out for therapy, they're playing out their same old fight. They're getting caught in their same old negative cycle. And it can be, in the end, about virtually anything. It can be one coming home from work 10 minutes late. It can be a dropped teaspoon. It can be the way one looked at the other, one doing something too frequently, too rarely, too strongly, too mildly. Basically, anything. Each one has become primed to see the other one negatively, and they can see the proof of it everywhere. So by this stage, there is such despair. How can it possibly change? There's the loss of how their relationship used to be, and there is no pleasant view of the future. And it's common for at least one of them to be saying, either implicitly or explicitly, we can't go on like this. And it's there that we have our glimmer of hope. We can't go on like this. So I move in and I validate the despair of living in this relationship as it is. And I touch into the wanting. It's the longing that has brought them into the room, the longing for positive change and reconnection. I get it. I hear how awful you're both finding your relationship right now. The way you end up feeling so awful so often. You're telling me how unbearable it is, and yet you're here, and you're saying, we can't go on like this. So can I check? I'm hearing some hope that maybe with my help, this relationship can improve, can be something really worth staying for. Am I right? And that wanting, that longing, however small, however big, is for the relationship that was and for the relationship that could be. So I'd like you now to imagine something else. So if you want to close your eyes, do so. And if you're feeling really emotionally vulnerable at the moment, just take care to do this at a really light level, or even just listen and don't actually do the exercise. So you pitch it where you need to. I want you to just bring into your mind's eye 2 people who've been quite close to you in your life, one whom you trust and you've got a positive relationship with now, or a memory of a positive relationship in the past, and one whom you have had a less positive relationship with, and don't make that the person you've had the worst time in your life with. Yeah, just for simplicity, I'm going to call them the positive one and the negative one. So if you just call the positive one to mind and notice how you feel in your body. Does your body feel light or heavy, tense or loose, or anything else? Notice if there's any particular thoughts that go on in your mind about the person and about you with them. And then just let go of that image of the person. And now call to mind the one we're calling the negative one. And notice any shift in your body. Is it heavier or lighter, tenser or more relaxed, or any other changes? What thoughts go on in your mind about the person and you with the person? And now leave again that image of the person. And imagine that today you're going to do something that's going to stretch you, cause you some anxiety. Maybe you can think of something specific that would do that for you. Maybe a job interview or something like making a presentation to a group of people. Now, both of your people know about this event and they know that you're going to be feeling a bit anxious about it. So in your mind's eye, see the negative person approaching you to say something and notice your body's reaction. It might be really subtle or it might be really big and obvious. Notice what runs through your mind and notice in your imagination what you want to do in relation to that person. And then let that image go and let yourself just settle a little. And there's still that event to cope with today. And now you can see your positive person who knows all about it and is approaching you. How do you feel in your body? Again, it might be just a subtle shift, or it might be really clear. Seeing your positive person, what runs through your mind. And what is it that you want to do? And as that positive person and you part company, how are you feeling in your body? What's going on in your mind? How do you feel now about facing this event later today? Okay, we're going to leave that now and come back to the session. So do what you need to do to help make that transition. So open your eyes, stand up, stretch, shake yourself, whatever. I can see some of you doing some things. That's lovely. Okay.
Sandra, can you maybe move a little bit closer? Because you're still blurry. I don't know if that's going to change anything.
Yeah, a bit better?
Yeah, can you also like take the camera a little bit down? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So emotionally focused therapy, it's a therapy approach that combines experiential and systemic therapies, and it's driven by attachment theory, as was originally developed by John Bowlby. And the basic principle of attachment theory is that a safe emotional connection to a few people is a fundamental survival need that's wired into us over millions of years of evolution. As Sue Johnson, the founder of emotionally focused therapy, says, we are homo vinculum, emotionally bonding mammals. Your positive person may well be one of your safe emotional connections, a person who you can turn to for care and support, something that adult attachment theorists have found is important for adults as well as for children. It's our secure attachments that provide us with a safe haven. It's a refuge from the challenges of life. And they provide us with a safe base. That feeling that someone's got our back as we reach out in the challenges of life. And it may well be that when in that exercise you left your positive person, that you felt a little bit lighter about facing the imagined event that was going to stretch you today. And this is what Bowlby called effective dependency. How our ability to take in that safety, that care and support enables us to face the world in a more confident and a more independent way. And it's likely that as adults, these relationships are reciprocal, that those people that we feel safe and secure with also feel safe and secure with us. And our ability to turn towards each other with that kind of care and support, it's something that our couples aren't usually experiencing anymore, or not very often when they first come to us. They'll often seem like that negative person to each other. And of course, that's what we want to support them to change. So in EFT, we have a really clear map of where we're going, how to get there. So what is the place that we want to get to? And I don't know if you can imagine that place. You may have your own words for it. For EFTers, what it's about is it's about ARE, being mutually accessible, responsive, and engaged. And the essence of that, which I explained to couples in the first session, is that we want to get them to a place where in times of stress and challenge, their first thought and action is actually to turn towards each other for care and support. The opposite of what's happening at the moment. So Pat and Sam certainly aren't turning towards each other at the moment, are they? Yeah, even with a dropped mug, they spring apart. And did you notice Sam's muttering? Sam's saying, here we go again. I got it wrong and it's the same old fight. Sam at least is really familiar with the repetitive nature of their arguing, whether it's about a mug or anything else. And this is what we call their negative cycle. And we already know quite a bit about it at a really simple level. So Sam does something that Pat reacts to with anger and criticism. And then Sam starts to explain and defend. Pat takes no notice but continues and then rushes away in tears, leaving Sam to tidy up with that sense of I got it wrong. And here we go again. And both of them end up feeling awful and disconnected from each other. So even in their first session, we will pull out this cycle from the examples that they share, often in a really animated, critical and despairing way, of course. And this is the first small step that we take with them to help move them from focusing on the other, so Pat's look at what you've done, or focusing on themselves, like Sam's I got it wrong, to instead notice the cycle that they get caught in, where one impacts the other in a reciprocal, ongoing negative loop. So you might be wondering, as EFT therapists do, how they manage to reconnect again. And indeed, this does give us an important clue on how connected or disconnected they are overall. So Sam tells me that keeping quiet and out of the way seems the best solution, because then things calm down at some point. And Pat tells me that rushing out of the room was because the anger was just building and building, and Sam was just standing there pathetically doing and saying nothing of any help. It was like Sam had already disappeared. And then Pat would pace up and down and sometimes come back to Sam and be critical again. And it could take days before the anger subsided in Pat. And then Sam would feel relieved because the strategy of keeping quiet and out of the way seemed to have worked. And they would never return to the argument. That would feel far too dangerous. So instead they kind of ignore it and they would carry on with another hurt in the relationship to add to so many others. Yeah. So how do they feel about this cycle and how they manage it? Well, what I notice and share with them is that they've got different ways of managing arguments. So Pat pursues in criticism and Sam withdraws and keeps quiet. And this is the commonest pattern in couples. They're very far from alone in how they're reacting. And yet, of course, they will still do it in their own unique way. However, in what they've shared and the way that they've shared it, I can hear that they essentially feel the same about the arguments. Yeah, they both feel sad. They both feel despairing. They both need it to stop and they don't know how to do that. And they want to be able to reconnect. So how is it for them to hear that? Because that's what I'll do. I'll put that together and I'll give them that. Often they'll feel some relief. We aren't crazy. Other people do it as well. That normalising of it, lots of people do it like this, is really helpful. And then sometimes you can catch that little look between the two of them, which either implicitly or explicitly kind of says, God, we seem to be in such different places, but actually we're both feeling awful about this. We both want the same thing. Blimey. And now we can go a bit deeper. We can move into emotion. Emotion is prioritized in emotionally focused therapy. And it's something that John Gottman's acknowledged that Sue Johnson brought into couples therapy. Now, most of us who worked with emotion before we got introduced to emotionally focused therapy, we thought we knew about emotion. But in EFT, we found something so much more. And Sue talks about how we work directly with the most powerful thing in the room. So when we're learning EFT, I think virtually everybody takes quite a journey to understanding the power of emotion, not being intimidated by it, taking hold of it, making it our friend, and actively working with it. And if we can't stay with our own and other people's emotions and work with it, we can't support our clients to stay with and work with their emotion and that of their partner. So it's really important, our own development as therapists, being with emotion. Emotion isn't an irrational response, as some people think. It's actually an information processing system. It's focused on our survival. And Bowlby describes the main function of our emotions is to communicate our needs to us and to others, to communicate our motives and our priorities. So we don't just want to regulate emotion. We don't just want to calm down Pat and Sam and explore better ways of them behaving so that they don't get so upset with each other so frequently. For the EFT therapist, emotion is both the target of change and the agent of change. And what that means is that we move into emotion in order to transform it. And as a result, we create positive change in the relationship. Okay, let's do another exercise. I want you to think of a brief positive interaction that you had with someone recently. If you've got a partner, it might have been with them, but it can be with anyone. And it might have been face-to-face, or especially these days, it might have been online or on the phone. Just take a moment to just recall a positive interaction. It can be tiny and it can be big. And I want you to just stay with your sense of that positive interaction. Do you notice any particular sensations in your body as you recall it? And just see if any of these help to get you clearer. What specifically do you feel? Like lightness, heaviness? Where in your body do you feel it? Your stomach, your jaw, shoulders, back, legs? Does that feeling have a shape, a color? Is it static or moving? And as you stay with that incident and that sensation in your body, what words come to you? So some examples would be, they love me. That was so lovely of them. I felt so supported. I felt so much lighter afterwards. It's so great to be in this relationship. Notice what your words are. And now let's just go back a bit. What was it specifically that the person did that gave you that good feeling? See how precise you can get. Was it that look they gave you? And if so, describe that look. Was it the words they said? And if so, which of their words were the most powerful? Or what else was it? And let's just put that all together. So when this person did this specific thing, in your body you felt, and you told yourself. And then what did you do? What was your action? And then just notice how you feel right now as you've put all of that together and become so much clearer about that positive experience. And then again, coming back to the room and to the session. And here's an example of mine. So I'm thinking back to an experience of going on a local walk with my partner and our 2 dogs. So my partner's walking and I'm in my electric wheelchair. And I'm remembering her making eye contact with me with a warm smile and reaching out her hand to hold mine. And I just remember this feeling of completeness and joy in this really simple experience of a family walk. And there was this warmth in my chest and a possibility of a kind of gentle, happy tear pricking at the back of my eyes. And this real sense of knowing I was loved and that my love was received. And I just took her hand and I gently squeezed it and we carried on. And it's a really small thing, but it's a really precious memory that I just hold on to. And what we've just done is we've assembled our emotion. So every emotion has a cue. It has something specific that was a trigger. There's an incredibly rapid appraisal of whether the situation is safe or unsafe, negative or positive. There's a physiological arousal in our body, and we create meaning. We tell ourselves things about the event, and then we act, we do something in response to all of that. And in that exercise, I asked you to be curious and explore a positive experience. And of course, in the therapy room, a lot of the time we're working with emotions that are much more painful to explore. So let's have a look again at Pat and Sam. So it's still early in therapy, and neither of them are used to slowing down and getting curious and connecting with their emotions. So I need to really attune to them and go gently. So I empathize and I invite them to collaborate with me. We're a team together in this. So wow, that is such a tight and painful cycle you both get caught in. Can we slow down and go into it a bit more? And I could work with either of them, but I choose to start with Pat and assembling the emotion. So it's the crash of the mug on the floor that was enough to trigger Pat. There's such a sensitivity now to anything that could be seen as negative. And that, in a sense, that itself is a shock to Pat, that response is so rapid now to anything. And Pat notices a tight jaw and general kind of physical agitation. And the phrases that comes into Pat's head include, you are careless, you don't care about anything. Obviously, really negative ways of seeing Sam. Yeah. And as Pat stays with that, a new realization comes because Pat's now listening. Yeah. A realization of something deeper. You don't care about me. Maybe you don't love me anymore. Accompanied by a sense of distress and dread, because Pat has now connected with that awful feeling that becoming loud and critical masks. I'm so scared that you don't love me anymore. And tears come as Pat stays with this attachment fear, this emotional and mental understanding of the root of all that angry reactivity. Staying there is hard, but it's possible, at least briefly, because Pat isn't alone. Pat is accompanied by an attuned, authentic, non-judgmental therapist who knows what they're doing, why they're doing it, and where they're going. And Sam's noticing, rather puzzled and intrigued. So we will move on to assemble Sam's emotion, but not immediately, because let's not forget that EFT, like attachment theory, is focusing on the within and the between, yeah, the intrapersonal and the interpersonal. And we want Pat to not only go into emotion in a new way, but crucially to make a new interaction or move with it by sharing it with Sam in what we call an engaged encounter or enactment. And in this early stage of therapy, we're just making small incremental shifts that can still feel really anxiety provoking and vulnerable. Yeah. So if you put yourself into the shoes of Pat, you're just touching into, for the first time, actually, I'm so scared that you don't love me anymore. And knowing that you and Sam actually rarely talk now about anything meaningful, and certainly not something that's going to make you vulnerable to each other, how might you feel if I asked you to tell Sam how scared you are? It might well have increased your anxiety, your tension, your fear level. But that is what the therapist, the EFT therapist, does. We don't move out of emotion, but in. But there are a few pointers here. We work within the person's window of tolerance. So in this case, we're going to take care not to overwhelm Pat. And we might slice the invitation thin. So we might ask first if Pat can imagine turning and sharing this with Sam, rather than just asking Pat to share. Yeah, and that way it helps us gauge the level of anxiety and make adjustments. So for example, if Pat were to share, I feel too vulnerable to share with you that I'm scared, that would be one Pat's limit. Yeah, and another one might be able to turn and share, it's true. I didn't even really know it myself until I did that. Underneath all this anger and criticism, I'm scared you don't love me anymore. And actually, both of those would be making steps towards connecting to the other. So how was it for Pat to turn and share that with Sam? Better than expected, perhaps. Yeah, Pat may well feel a little bit of relief in being able to put it into words and tell Sam. There's maybe a little bit of hesitation as well, though, because how's Sam going to respond? So we go over to Sam and we check it out, and Sam's a bit stunned. This is new. When you start shouting at me like that, I think you hate me. And now you're telling me it's because you're scared I don't love you. That's really hard to take in. I do love you, you know. Just hasn't felt very safe lately to tell you. And back to Pat. Is Pat taking that in? Yeah, I can hear Sam. We've both stopped showing each other our love. It's really sad. What amazing work they've just done together, and I make sure that they know it. Look at that. We've gone from you, Pat, sharing how angry you got when Sam dropped the mug, and into the anger being actually about how scared you are that Sam doesn't love you anymore. Something you didn't really have words for yourself before. And then you were able to turn and share it with Sam. You were so brave to take that risk. And Sam, you heard Pat and you were stunned. It was so different from what you'd been telling yourself, that Pat actually hates you. And you were able to risk telling Pat that your love's still there. And then Pat, you recognize that actually both of you have stopped showing each other love, and how sad it is. You've worked so hard today and you've got to such an important place. It was never about the mug. It's about missing each other. And these amazing moments of emotional connection, where the view of self and the view of other and relationship shift bit by bit in a positive direction. I don't know, it might seem far-fetched or impossibly rosy, but they're actually really common in emotionally focused therapy, as again and again, we guide our couples through what we call the EFT tango. And we've just gone through the 5 moves of the EFT tango with Pat and Sam. Yeah, so move 1, we've reflected the present process. We've spent time with Pat and Sam, and time with them sharing that incident of the dropped mug, and we've noticed a place to explore more emotionally. Moved into move 2, affect assembly and deepening. Pat's assembled the different elements of emotion and come to a new awareness of being scared that Sam no longer felt love for Pat. And we're in the early stages of therapy, so that's deep enough. We've done move 3, we've choreographed an engaged encounter where I asked Pat to share this new awareness with Sam, and slicing it as thin as it needed to be so that Pat could succeed in doing it. Move 4 was processing the encounter. It's another crucial move. How was it to say that? How was it to receive that? And then move 5, integrating and validating. So summarizing the work that's been done, validating it, and both of them, and so supporting them to integrate it even more. Yeah, to really feel that small step, that corrective emotional experience. And these tangos can take just a few minutes, or they can take several sessions. They are an organic process that the EFT therapist will guide the couple through again and again as they move through the healing process. That's what we turn to all the time, is tangoing. And this move forward, it's got specific stages. It's got 3 in total. And so far we've been in stage 1 with Pat and Sam. And our work here is to stabilize them and their relationship and to de-escalate their negative cycle. So as they continue with their sessions, Pat and Sam can see the negative cycle that they get caught in more and more clearly. They explore what's actually going on underneath it, and they share it with each other. And they're starting to be a team against the negative cycle, a cycle that they can see quicker and quicker. They can stop it in its tracks at least some of the time, and it gets triggered less and less often anyway. And now the rooms become calmer. Life at home is much calmer as well, but the work is not complete. Yeah, the change event of de-escalation has been achieved, but it's a first order change. So it's like redecorating the house when what you want to do is rebuild the foundations so it can withstand earthquakes. And that's second order change. So this happens in stage 2, where we're going to do deep healing with both Pat and Sam, and so with their relationship. And this healing comes from pain within the relationship, and old pain maybe right back to their family of origin. And where better to do this healing than in a safe relationship where you're accompanied and held. So during stage 2, the work is deeper and more time is spent with one partner rather than regularly going backwards and forwards. And the other one isn't left out. They're not bored and frustrated on the sidelines. They are engaged, they are intrigued, they are a backup and a support. So Sam's able to explore how withdrawing when there's conflict is about trying to keep safe. And growing up, Sam's home was chaotic. There wasn't much money for a school uniform or a packed lunch. And Sam's teachers didn't know that situation, and they would tell Sam off in class. And it led to feelings of feeling trapped, humiliated, being wrong, bad, and inadequate. Yeah, and Sam's able to weep with Pat as this is recalled, and Pat's able to hear Sam's pain and understand so much more clearly how withdrawing is about feeling threatened and not a lack of love for Pat. And being guided to share this with Pat from a deeply vulnerable and scared place is a huge move for Sam. And it's taking it one step further that really shifts Sam's sense of agency and assertiveness in the relationship. It's the step that defines the change event that we call withdrawal re-engagement. So imagine Sam being asked to think about how Pat can help when Sam feels threatened and starts to withdraw. What might Sam ask for? So one possibility would be for Pat to notice and come over with a hug and say, "You're okay." So how would it be for Sam to ask that from this vulnerable place of not feeling adequate or good enough? Can you get a sense of how massive a risk that feels to ask from that vulnerable place that's been kept protected for so long? So with guidance, Sam makes the request. Can you, when I start doing that withdrawing thing, can you come and give me a hug? Can you tell me I'm okay? And Pat's there. Of course I will. I want to do that for you. It makes me feel good that I can help you with that. You're more than okay to me. What a beautiful and powerful corrective emotional experience for the EFT therapist to then process with them, to validate, to integrate, completing another tango. And over the next few sessions, it's going to be Pat's turn to go through a change event. And this time it's called a pursuer softening. And Sam is so much more present and available, so much more able to stay as Pat goes to a deeply vulnerable place and shares it with Sam. And when Pat reaches to Sam with a request, Sam is there, ready, willing, and able, accessible, responsive, and engaged. And it's with that pursuer softening, that second of the second order change events, that a fundamental shift occurs in how they view themselves, the other, and the relationship. And usually that's stage 2 completed. So we've now got Pat and Sam in stage 3, consolidation. And it's usually a brief stage where they return to their original problems and they review them in a new way. The issue is the issue. It's what I call clean and clear. And in their final session, they consolidate all the work they've done and how they now view their relationship and its future. They join together to agree on ways to sustain their relationship. They confirm their commitment to turning towards each other in times of stress. And they rewrite their story to include this time of therapy as something they were brave enough to do, to save a relationship they valued, as something that they worked on very hard with their therapist, reconnecting with themselves and each other, healing wounds and building a deep, secure sense of trust in their relationship. And then hugs followed before they headed out the door and into their new future together, mutually accessible, responsive, and engaged. So I've given you a brief taste of EFT through Pat and Sam, a taste that, of course, is a little bit simple in places and it misses out a lot of detail. But hopefully you've got a sense of the clear roadmap of EFT. And we don't just want to know how people get out of the fights they're stuck in. We know where they need to go and how to get there. But let's not leave Pat and Sam just yet. Notice. What's your image of Pat and Sam? As I've brought examples of their interactions to you, how has your image of them developed? What's the race and ethnicity of your Pat and Sam? What are their genders? Their sexual orientations? Their ages? Are they able-bodied, or is one or both disabled? And what else do you notice about your Pat and Sam? I was careful to never give anything specific away so that your own image could develop. They could be a British, mixed race, able-bodied, heterosexual, married couple in their 30s. Could be a white couple of an able-bodied American lesbian and a disabled German bisexual woman, or so many other variations. Just notice what your Pat and Sam are like and how you are with that. Emotionally focused therapy is being really widely and effectively used with couples, individuals, and families in different cultures and from a diversity of spiritual, religious, sexual, and gender orientations, different forms of families and socioeconomic conditions, as well as specific issues such as chronic illness, depression, and post-traumatic stress. We commonly work with couples who bring trauma histories into their relationships, whether that be long before this relationship or attachment injuries that have happened in this relationship. EFT can be used across so many populations and so many issues with its essence of creating connection. And for me, being an EFT trainer and supervisor is amazing. My passion for EFT can be expressed in supporting people to develop as EFT therapists. And together we enable so many more people like Pat and Sam to live more fulfilling relationships and lives. And maybe I will see some of you in that journey. And I know that some of you here are already on that journey with me. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I think this was deeply touching. Also the visualization. Perfect. We have tons of questions here.
Yep.
So let's start with the simplest one. So who was it? I get the name later. Someone asked if you're working with a couple, and you already mentioned that you're going into single sessions later on. And are you also delving into the family history? And is it necessary to have both people within the couple participating in the session?
What we usually do is we have 4 sessions that are in a sense seen as the initial assessment, though we're working with them through those sessions as well. So we'll have a session together And then we'll have an individual session with each of them and then come back again. And in the individual session, we're doing the safety checking, but we're also talking about their family histories, how their history of being in relationship with others, and looking at how that kind of connects with the patterns that they have in their relationship now, as well as in those sessions looking at things that they were not quite able to fully express in the session together. And then usually after that, you'll work together with the couple all the time, unless there's specific blocks or specific reasons that you decide that you'll have maybe 1 or 2 individual sessions. And if you do, that'll usually be with the other person as well. So you'll have, the same amount with one as you would another, traditionally, yeah.
Okay, Gusharan was the name. Sorry if that answered your question. And then there was a bit of confusion between the EFT and EFT tapping in Wave, and how do you differentiate EFT from all the other forms that are out there? We also had the Satir transformational systemic therapy, because they're all intrapsychic and interpersonal.
Yeah, it's a challenge when you've got the same kind of initials. Yeah, so it's not tapping, because tapping is something that you're doing to kind of let go of the emotion, if you like, to kind of let go of the feelings, whereas our emotionally focused therapy is the reverse. And then you've also got EFT, which is emotion focused therapy, which is Les Greenberg and others. And that form of therapy originated from individual therapy and has moved into couple and family. And they are much less into attachment theory, for example. And then we have emotionally focused therapy, which is Sue Johnson's, where emotion and attachment theory are very central.
Okay. So several people were wondering about what happens if the people in the couple, if they're not on the same emotional maturity level.
So what you're doing is, you as the therapist are holding each of them. So sometimes you will work at slightly different levels. And you are meeting them where they are, but also helping them be accessible to the other. So one of those skills that we often doing is reframing. So reframing is sometimes, when you've got a person who isn't very emotionally literate, who has never really had the experience of going into their bodies and noticing any kind of a shift that is connected to what's happening outside in the world to them, anything really small is a big thing. And they may also use emotion. They may not use emotion words. They may use, or they may use them very small. So a little troubled might actually be terrified, but you can't use the word terrified because it doesn't kind of go for them. So you go with the words that they're using and you make sense of them. So for example, you will help translate that to the partner and to the person themselves. So it might be that you're saying something like, okay, I get it. You just, you can't, you're just feeling like a bit of a tightness in your jaw, and you're telling me you're kind of a bit troubled. Yeah. And that's big. That's big for you to notice those things. Yeah. This is not a world that you usually kind of wander in, and you're doing amazingly well to kind of stay with me with this. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that with me, that you're noticing that there is a reaction that you're having when your wife gets really critical with you. Yeah, that your jaw kind of gets a bit tight, that you know that you feel troubled. It matters to you. Yeah, and then what she can hear is, I matter. He actually is affected. And he's actually being brave to stick with this process that's a really alien one to him.
Okay, so we got a lot of positive feedback. And I read one out that says, thanks, Sandra, that was brilliant and so clear. I love this stuff, and every time I hear you and others talk about it, it becomes clearer and more accessible to me. Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah.
One question was, how does this apply in situations when there is violence and abusive behavior?
Oh gosh, how long have I got for that?
4 minutes.
A minute. Have a look. So Lieven Migerod and Jeff Sloddermaker from Belgium, they've written 2 brilliant articles on EFT and intimate partner violence. So go to them. And from my, work in learning their approach, I would say we're moving towards a place where we need to differentiate between what kind of violence it is. Is it a violence where the person being violent is kind of getting off on it? Is it a power thing? Is it something that is too unsafe to work with? Or is it something that kind of gets created in this relationship where it's not what the person wants to be doing? It feels awful, and it's like it gets created in the distress between the couple, in which case we can start to work with that. And what Lieven and Jeff have been really kind of bringing forward is, these people need help. And if we keep telling them that it has to be safe for us to be able to work, they get lost in how the heck do they get to safe. So what they do is they work in the first sessions just in an EFT way, looking at these issues and making sure it's safe enough, but actually the therapy work itself leading to them becoming safe enough to then continue to do the deeper work.
Mm-hmm. People were asking if you could spell out their names again, or maybe we could also do it at the end of the session and we can post it underneath the Facebook video.
That would be good. Yeah. Yeah. Lieven's surname is Migerode.
Yeah, we'll Google that later.
Yeah, but we'll sort it out. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. So if you go to the Facebook group of the Embodiment Conference of Intimacy and Relationships, underneath this video, we're going to post it. Okay. So I think we have time for one last question. Patricia, I once read that the EFT had a 70% success rate. What are the key attributes of where it does not work?
Okay, so yes, it's had a lot of research on it. It's the gold standard of research in terms of couples therapy, has really good results, whether you're talking about in the lab kind of conditions or generally. When does it not work? It doesn't work so well when you've got intimate partner violence and somebody is into that in a kind of real power way. That's not going to work. You need somebody to have enough stability in their mental health. And if they have a really strong addiction to something, then they need to really be addressing that and taking on board it as an issue. Otherwise, it will keep pulling against the relationship. And if there's an affair and the person is still really attached, seeing the person, or just in their headspace, just really attached and kind of with that, then you can't pull on the attachment connection between the couple if it's not in existence, if you like. And again, if somebody is basically coming to leave, so sometimes they just need to have the first session and maybe the individual session to really get in touch with that for themselves and to end the relationship. I never see that as a negative. I see it as something where those sessions have just really helped crystallize something for somebody, that it's too far and that it's not going to work. So I think those are the main things of when it doesn't work.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Yeah,
Thank you.
There are a lot of things in that everybody can relate to somehow, because we're all in relationships all the time. I certainly do. So thanks a lot for sharing all your knowledge and your wisdom in such a clear way. And
thank you.
Before we close the session, I already texted the Facebook link to the Facebook group. How can people get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me via email. So so one of those is, which I can remember off the top of my head, is Sandra Potential Development at gmail.com. And then there's another one, which is acre.efttraining@gmail.com. Those are the best ways.
Okay, I noted down the first one. And great. Okay, last announcements. We got the Facebook page. We also have coffee rooms where if you, in between sessions, if you want to meet people, you can just go there and chat and drink coffee and share with other people to live in that community. And yeah, so there's a lot more sessions coming on here. And if you feel like this is really overwhelming and it's so much, there's the possibility to upgrade to like buying this all the recordings so you can watch it in your own time and also digest it in your own time, because there's so much coming in. You also want to like have time to process it all, especially if it goes deep and if it touches you. So yeah, thanks a lot for everybody listening in. Thank you so much, Sandra, and enjoy the rest of the conference and take good care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you all for being here.